Welcome to a very different style of episode. As you may have seen from some of my earlier LinkedIns and what have you, I am adjusting the frequency that I launch my full-scale weekly, or they're no longer going to be weekly episodes. I'm going to switch to monthly episodes on the first Tuesday of each calendar month for the style of episode where I do an interview or with either one or even two guests. However, I've decided to infill, if I can, not every week necessarily, but some weeks, with shorter style videos, and this is the first one of those. So this is a different style of episode of David Anderson talking market data. Specifically, I'm going to talk about knowledge, and I suppose the application of knowledge, specifically for us in the market data industry. Let me just sort of run through what I mean by that, the background effectively to where this all came from. It all started when I was wondering, when I was considering, when I was observing what the knowledge base, what the skill set, what the knowledge base of the market data industry, the people working in the market data industry that I was coming across back in actually the early 2000s leading right up to 2007 when these ideas first came to me. I also recognized that this knowledge set, although there was like a perceived problem, which I'm going to come on to, knowledge was often siloed. It wasn't necessarily that there was a lack of knowledge generally. It was often that knowledge was specific to one particular area of speciality. So people tended to have specialities. They tended to work in silos, and their knowledge was very focused on that particular silo. So there was a shortfall, but that shortfall varied. Some people had extremely deep knowledge in a particular silo. Some people, those newer to the industry, that shortfall existed across the board, and there were other people obviously who'd been in the industry for many years who knew an awful lot and had a deep knowledge of the industry. So that shortfall, although it did exist, was varied. The whole point of the idea that I came up way back then was to improve that knowledge base by identifying the shortfall. Obviously, that begged for a solution. That was a problem that needed solving, and the solution was to increase the knowledge levels. But the real objective wasn't purely to just increase the knowledge. The increasing of the knowledge was a means to the ultimate end. That ultimate end was effectively to have everybody working in the industry, or as many people as possible working in the industry, more efficiently and more effectively. Efficiency being doing things right, doing things well, doing things better, which is obviously a good thing. And effectiveness, slightly different to my mind, which is doing the right things. So efficiency is actually improving the skill sets, but doing the right things, effectiveness, is actually having a better understanding of where to apply that knowledge, what to apply that knowledge on. And I think that application of knowledge is a critical element of this whole process. It's not just a simple case of acquiring knowledge, or that effectively is what we're doing in this program, but more about seeing if one can apply that knowledge more effectively. So from that was born this idea of professional certification. That was envisaged, as I said, way back in 2007. But it actually got launched in 2010 when we launched the first effective exams for this professional certification. And at that time, it came from FISD. I had envisaged the idea, I pitched the idea to FISD, but actually FISD very sensibly decided it was much better if FISD could operate and run this professional certification. But very graciously, very kindly, very pleasingly to me, they said, David, why don't you create it for us? So that's when I effectively started working for FISD, the trade association for the market data industry, which was and is the most suitable place for a professional certification for an industry sector, market data in our case. That's why it sits with FISD sensibly. So What is ProCert? ProCert is the sort of shortened version of the name professional certification that we came up with at FISD. And the first one that we came up with was the Financial Information Associate, the FIA for short. What is a certification? The certification, first of all, is a definition, a scope of the knowledge set that we are asking for, and when I say we are asking for, it's the industry. Obviously, I was orchestrating this, FISD was orchestrating this, but the whole essence of coming up with a professional certification for the industry was to talk to the industry, to find out what the industry actually wanted. So the first task was to come up with a syllabus, a definition of the scope. So we have that syllabus now as a PDF that you can download from the FISD website, fisdnet.net, that is. Go to the professional development, the professional certification area of the website, and you'll be able to pull down a PDF for the FIA syllabus version 4. We've had 4 iterations, all 4 of which I've written. Then we have exams. So you've defined effectively what the skill set actually should be, but you want to be able to test that. You want to be able to prove and demonstrate that an individual person has acquired a certain level of competency, a certain level of knowledge within the scope of the syllabus, the definition of the knowledge that needs to be acquired. The exam that we created, 150 multiple choice questions that now can be taken online. A few years ago, we required people to go to specific test centres, but post-COVID, this is now online. Somebody can take the exam at whatever day they want, whatever hour they want. They don't have to queue up for it. There's unlimited scope. There's unlimited capabilities for taking the exam. The pass mark for the exam is 75%. And roughly about 75% of people pass at the first instance. I think a key point about that pass mark is it's not too daunting. It's not as daunting as some other exams that exist out there, but anybody who actually passes it should have a degree of pride in passing it, because it wasn't just turn up and you get a certificate. It is, you had to actually apply yourself and pass the exam. However, how are you going to pass the exam? No, not everybody necessarily has the skills immediately to hand to be able to pass the exam. Some people might have, but the vast majority of people out there we know want to take on board some sort of training, some sort of education. So let's have a focus on that training. That's the next bit. I think the first point is there are choices. I keep using the phrase horses for courses. It depends what style of learning is suitable for you as an individual or for a team of people that are doing this. There are lots of different types that I'm going to talk about in due course. And those different types of training come with different costs. There are the Rolls Royce, if you will, of training, which I'm going to talk about in a second, like in-person classroom training. That's the top of the pile, but it is the most expensive of all. There are a variety of lower tiers of service that come at different price points. And again, another aspect of choice is not just the cost, but it's actually about the flexibility. I personally believe that the sort of prime top of the pile is classroom training, and that is the most expensive, but it's also inflexible. It means that you've got a group of people who've all got to turn up at the same place on the same date and at the same time. That doesn't suit everybody. So the choices that are before you relate to cost, pricing effectively, and ultimately to flexibility. As I mentioned, classroom training, in-person training is the creme de la creme. It is the Rolls Royce of services, but it has a price tag that associates with that. As you can see, if you're watching this rather than just listening to this, I, David Anderson, am one of the trainers that teaches to this course, but I'm not the only one. I want to respect and acknowledge that there's a group of highly efficient, highly capable, highly respected trainers out there. So you don't just have David Anderson your choice. Please look around. If you go on the FISD website, fisd.net, you will find a list and details of recognized trainers, recognized by FISD, to be able to train to this FIA course. But again, there's in-person training. Slightly lower down, but again, excellent value for money, are the e-learning facilities, the e-learning offering. It's a combination of videos, and you'll be thankful. You see my smiling face coming out there. If you want to take on board the videos from the e-learning, you'll get 7.5 hours of David Anderson talking at you, but in a not interactive manner. In other words, the difference between in-person training and the videos, it's still the same person talking to you, but in-person gives you a more interactive experience. The videos are the ability to actually watch and listen. I mean, a good thing, the flexibility about the videos is you can watch them anytime, anywhere. You can watch them more than once. There isn't a sort of rewind button on David Anderson doing the in-person course, but David Anderson doing the videos, you can rewind, you can go forwards, you can repeat and watch multiple times. So again, the videos, part of the e-learning package, are much more flexible, and with the e-learning packages you also get a whole variety of PDF notes as well in text form. The most recent, and by the way, all of these facilities, the classroom training and the e-learning videos, have been available from way back in 2010 in the early iterations. As I said, we're on to iteration version number 4 now, but those have been available for many years. With, I think, about 2,500 people have now passed the exam. However, big drum roll, fanfare, the very latest thing from FISD is an ebook, a textbook, if you will. Now, again, this has been packaged up when we're talking about price points. At the lowest price point, it is actually offered by FISD. Now, when you buy the exam, you get the ebook. You can't buy the exam on its own. So you cannot buy the exam on its own, and you can't buy the ebook on its own. It's a package. The ebook and the exam are now packaged together. I believe that's a 200-page textbook, which will effectively provide you all the necessary information in order to be able to pass the exam. So I think the observation I would make is there are different people with different styles, different preferences of how they want to learn. And again, there's no right, wrong to this. It's what suits people. There are different price points, and there are different degrees of flexibility in all of these offerings: classroom, e-learning, and ebook. So what about me? This is my selfish plug. I've been running now David Anderson Talking Market Data for nearly a year now. I don't earn money from this. It's a bit of a passion project at the moment. But I hope you will recognize that it's probably appropriate that I use my channel for a selfish plug. So what am I doing? Well, David Anderson is doing a variety of things. I do in-person classroom training. When I teach the course, I do that over 3 half days. A half day consists of a start at 9 o'clock in the morning, and we work hard right through till 2 o'clock, postponing lunch or having a sandwich while I'm doing the teaching. So it's a pretty intensive 3 half days. That can be taught as a mixture of different firms. What I've done in the past is one firm has graciously hosted us in a conference room and put 1, 2, 5, 10 people of their own staff on that course, and then graciously allowed other candidates to come from other companies to be taught alongside their people. That creates an opportunity of scale where, obviously, if you've only got a small number of people, if you're willing to have other people join the course, you don't have to meet the minimum requirements. But there's also a benefit, I think, if you've got a mixture, if we have had a mixture of people on a training course, then different anecdotes, different experiences, I pull in what other people think while we're doing the training. So there's different points of expertise, as I mentioned earlier on, those silos, and therefore one can involve different people, and it makes for a more vibrant and interesting experience. Having said that, I've done a variety of courses where I've only had people from one particular company, and obviously that's a little bit more, is it more relaxed, I suppose, is something that I've observed. Everybody's comfortable because they know they're with immediate colleagues. And often if we have a group, I was teaching only earlier this year 14 people, all from the same company, but they had a mixture of different experiences. Even though they were from the same company, there were a variety of different experiences and expertise. I teach this, and I will gladly package the exam in. I'll effectively charge for the in-person classroom training on its own, if you wish. I can then add on the exam package, which also comes now with the ebook. And if you wish, some people would also like the e-learning videos as an accompaniment to the in-person training. So again, rather than buying those standalone, if you want to buy a complete package of the in-person training, the exam, the ebook, and the video e-learning, that is all possible. Finally, something newer that I'm now offering and very open to discussions with those of you out there who might be interested is something a little bit more bespoke. Now, if for whatever reason the FIA training course that I'm talking about doesn't quite meet your requirements, I'm totally open to having a conversation with you and to design and craft something that is bespoke to your particular requirements. Obviously, it has to be something that fits in the wheelhouse of my knowledge and experience, my 41 years of working in the market data industry in a variety of different roles. But I haven't worked in every single aspect of market data. I don't know every single aspect of the data industry backwards, front, sideways. I know an awful lot of it, but not everything. So if you want to discuss something more bespoke, I would love to talk to you about it. So that really wraps up this particular section. I am going to do other sections after this, so you may see more to come, but I will now bid you farewell on this. Hey, welcome back. I gave you the sort of introduction, the background to professional certification and what David Anderson is up to, but I thought it might be helpful to give something a little bit more specifically about the Financial Information Associate, the FIA certification. It is the first certification. Way back in 2007 we envisaged it, and we actually launched it in 2010. We are at version 4 now. There will be a version 5 sometime in 2026. The idea behind the FIA that it would be the building block, the starting point, the foundation, the most fundamental basics of all things market data. It wouldn't be everything, it would be the starting point. It's a very, very broad syllabus. When people look at the syllabus, they often say that it covers an enormous scope, an enormous range of all the aspects that make up the market data industry. But it's just the core basics. It's not everything about those topics. It's one layer, if you will, the base layer. It sets the building block, the foundation for everything else to come. It's made up of 4 different sections. The first section, markets, that represents 30%. Then there's data, also 30%. Technology is the third at 30%. And then finally, the 4th section, the smallest section, is issues and trends. Let me try and explain what each of those 4 sections actually is. Let's start off with markets. Now, markets is all about the context. We create the data, but there is a market that data is both serving and where that data comes from. I think it's important to understand that market data is the fuel that actually drives the markets, but the markets themselves are what generates that data. So we're going to be talking about what the capital markets are. We're explaining effectively the entirety of what the capital markets actually are. We'll go through in some detail this concept of the trade life cycle. We'll be talking about pre-trade decision making and all the things that go into that. We'll be talking about the trade itself, and then we'll be talking about post-trade, effectively what happens after the trade and the sort of data that is generated and what happens there. When I say what here, well, what exactly are the different facets of the capital markets? What are the instruments, the asset classes that make up the capital markets? We're going to be talking about equities. We're going to be talking about fixed income, aka bonds. We're going to be talking about foreign exchange. We're going to be talking about futures and options, i.e. the derivatives markets. We're going to be talking about commodities and energy. In other words, a whole range of different types of instrument and their characteristics. We're going to be talking about who. When I say who, well, who are the people, who are the entities that are actually trading these different instruments? We're going to be talking about the sell side, and there are whole different components within the sell side. We're going to be talking about, in big investment banks, we're talking about mergers and acquisitions. We're talking about the primary issuance departments and divisions. We're going to be talking about brokerage. We're going to be talking about market making. There's a whole variety of different elements that make up the quote unquote the sell side. We're going to be talking about the buy side. We're going to be talking about the long only asset managers. We're going to be talking about hedge funds. We're also going to be talking about prop trading houses that sort of fit in between the sell side and the buy side. So again, those sell side and buy side institutions are effectively the core elements of the capital markets. But then we're also going to be talking about other entities like exchanges, interdealer brokers. There's a whole variety of players effectively in the game that is the capital markets. Then we move on to section 2. Section 2 is, I suppose, what our industry is. It's data. One of the very sort of basic elements of that is we're going to be talking about where does the data come from, the different sources of data. Could that be from contributions from banks and other entities? Could it be from exchanges, effectively the data that is generated by an exchange, a data venue, an electronic marketplace like a stock exchange, or it could be other electronic marketplaces out there as well. We're going to talk about the different types of data. I have lots of discussions about what is meant by the word market data. There are different sort of effective definitions of market data. For me personally, and I'm not saying I'm right, I talk about the entirety of all data that the market needs, and that could be real-time pricing information from things like exchanges. It could be fundamental data both from companies and governments. It could be tick history data. It could be alternative data. It could be reference data. Again, I'm not going to go into detail about them. You need to do the course to understand what all these different data types actually are. We're going to talk about the delivery of that data, how that data gets. Is it a data feed? Is it a display screen of some sort, a terminal, if you will? There are lots of different delivery mechanisms. And then how is that data paid for? How is that data contracted for? There's a myriad of different ways that the owners, the intellectual property owners of all this data will charge for the data. It's quite controversial in part. It's also very complicated, and there are lots of different types, which again, I suppose that's what makes that complexity. We go into quite a lot of detail on that slippery and emotive subject to the commercials of market data. Then section 3 is the technology. Again, when I created this certification way back in, it first came out in 2010, some people didn't particularly like the idea we'd added a technology section in, because I think they'd been to some degree separated from the technology and they didn't feel they needed to understand the technology. I believe passionately that technology is the thing that drives our industry forward, and it is It was important back in 2010. In fact, since then and now in 2025, when I'm recording this video, it is even more important and only getting more important as we move forward when we think about some of the recent things like cloud and AI. But what are we talking about when we talk about technology? We're talking about general technology, not market data technology, general technology. And that goes into things like what's software, what's hardware, what are we talking about with connectivity, and then more recent iterations of technology, cloud and artificial intelligence. There's a lot that goes into that general technology. Then we try to get more specific when we're actually talking about the technology as it relates to market data. We're talking about data feeds. We're talking about data distribution, market data systems that distribute ultra low latency data, or maybe it's static data, maybe it's reference data and storage and whatever. And then how is that data displayed? Also, what are the various applications that are applied to that data, that market data? Again, the general and the specific. The fourth and final section, which is only 10% of the marks, effectively covers what's going on in Europe. What are the various regulations? What are the geopolitical issues that go on in Europe and what goes on in the US? And we're trying to get behind some of the regulations. If you're talking about Europe, we go into some detail about all the various iterations of MiFID, MiFID 1, MiFID 2, and some of the updates. And we're talking about US, we'll be talking about NMS, Regulatory National Market System. We'll be talking about the Dodd-Frank Act. We're talking about the Volcker rule. There's a whole variety of things that have happened, a lot obviously since the great financial crisis that took place in 2008, 2009. There's a lot of regulations, a lot of geopolitical issues that take place. So that is section 4. So, I just wanted to conclude and say, FIA is the foundational certification. It's where we started from. Sometimes we refer to it as level 1, and we have created 2 as it stands, level 2s, building on that foundation. 1 is the FIT, which stands for the Financial Information Technologist. That's a certification where we're building on that technology section in the FIA and going even further. And the other one is the Data Licensing Specialist, which is addressing that very complicated, that very slippery, that very frankly difficult topic of data licensing for the market data industry. Not an easy topic. So fundamentally, I'm talking about the FIA, but if you're interested, please talk to FISD about the FIT and the DLS. And on that note, I will bid you farewell on this particular video. Thank you for listening.